Penn State football stacking commits during the second run of commitments here at the end of June and beginning of July. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Ryan Snyder back once again to talk about the latest Nittany Lions commitment. Ryan, we are here at the end of June. Penn State has been looking for, let's be clear, they have offensive linemen in the class of 2026. They have guys that can play tackle. But we have been talking about in this second half, the team has been prioritizing, Phil Trautwein, offensive line coach, has been prioritizing true tackles. Those are what are left on the board for the most part, and those have been what they have been pursuing. They finally got one. So which one of those remaining players did they end up with?
Well, T. Frank, I normally introduce guys, but I'll let you do this one if you want, just because I'm not.
Nope.
Okay. Jack Fuchs.
Fuchs.
Jack Fuchs.
Fuchs.
Or actually, I think it's Fuchs. It's F
Fuchs?
with like books. That's all I know. And I don't want to get us kicked off YouTube, so we're gonna go with Fuchs because I think if I go a little more book, I might say something I shouldn't. Because I'm definitely going to say a bad word at some point over the next 6 months accidentally. But Penn State finally gets its offensive tackle, 6'8", 295. Everything there as far as physically you're looking for at the tackle position. Jack's been all over the place. His dad, of course, coached with Andy Kotelnicki at Kansas and Buffalo, so he's bounced around throughout his youth, which that happens with coaches' families. Everybody knows that. But he's now at Beech High School in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and certainly I think the progress that he made from a sophomore to a junior is what got him that offer, earned him that offer.
Mm-hmm.
He camped at Penn State in June 2024. So, they had an understanding of where his athletic base is. And of course, that was, excuse me, as a rising junior, then of course he just finished his junior season, now a rising senior. So I think that was a big part of it. And then, I think the coach's son aspect as well is something that Penn State really likes. His dad's an assistant coach for the Tennessee Titans now, offensive line as well. So, when it comes to, having that solid background and what dad can provide, Jack's up there with everyone. So I think Penn State really like.
In the class of 2026, the second son of a former offensive lineman or offensive line coach. They're stacking guys with NFL bloodlines. I think that's fair to say. I find that interesting.
Mm-hmm. Recruitment really came down to Kentucky and Indiana. Those were the three schools, of course, and Penn State. Came down to Kentucky and Penn State for the most part, and Jack just was flat out honest and really the developmental part I think was the big difference. He said that both he and his dad really like obviously what Trautwein has been able to do over the years. Of course, like I said, his dad coached with Kotelnicki for a long period of time, so, and there is a strong friendship there. The family actually came up for I think it was 4 days in April, and half of that or maybe 3/4 of that was to visit the school and for Jack to get an understanding for everything that Penn State has to offer. But also at the same time, I think he told me it was Kotelnicki's birthday weekend that weekend, so the families wanted to celebrate and all that stuff. So there is a very close tie there. I don't think that really played a part in him absolutely coming to Penn State. And look, let's just be honest, Kotelnicki could be a head coach this time next year at a different school. Let's call it what it is. He's maybe one of the hottest offensive coordinator names out there. So they know that that's what happens when your dad's been in the profession for however many years. So,
right.
But yeah, Penn State gets its tackle. Of course, there's room to add more. We'll see what happens with Marlon Bright. I feel good about that one. And right now they have 4 offensive linemen on board with Kevin Brown, Roseby Labintis, and Ben Ezekiel. We'll see where things go. But Trautwein certainly needed a guy that can play that position and mold him into something. To me, I mean, T. Frank, you'll get in this in film room, I assume, but he's got to get stronger and all those things. But that's what Chuck Losey's for. So I think that's to me is the one thing that kind of stands out. It's been discussed with me, and but aside from that, athletic base, coach's son, high IQ. There's a lot for Trautwein to work with.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways I think you can interpret the same answer. And so I'm interested. We'll get into that here in just 1 second, talking about what he brings to the table as far as his film room and what we saw on the full game footage. But first, we have to get to today's sponsor. In football and in finance, having a strong game plan makes all the difference. AJ Freedom Financial helps individuals build personalized financial strategies that align with their goals, timelines, and risk tolerance. From investment guidance and retirement planning to 401k rollovers, HSA assistance, and legacy and wealth strategies, AJ Freedom Financial offers thoughtful, one-on-one support backed by industry experience and a commitment to transparency. Whether you're starting to invest, planning for retirement, or you simply want a second look at your financial approach, AJ Freedom Financial is here to help you make informed, confident decisions. Schedule a no-obligation consultation today at www.ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. Again, that's ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. AJ Freedom Financial, helping Nittany Lions fans plan for what's next. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Gradient Securities, LLC. Arden Hills, Minnesota, 866-991-1539. Member FINRA, SIPC. Gradient Securities, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor offers investment advisory services under the DBA of Gradient Wealth Management. Gradient Securities, LLC, and its advisors do not render tax, legal, or accounting services. Insurance products and services offered through AJ Freedom Financial. AJ Freedom Financial and Freedom Financial Insurance, LLC are not affiliated with Gradient Securities, LLC. So let's talk about some of those things where you can have two different analysis of why you arrive at the same conclusion. But let's start generally with the positive traits for Jack Fuchs. And as you mentioned, size is obviously a really obvious thing for a guy who's 6'8", 295 with he's so big that his arms look short, but he's got more than enough length to play tackle. And this is what we were talking about, what Penn State was kind of missing in this class of 2026 was those guys with 34-inch arms, 6'8", that full frame that Phil Trautwein really likes. And as you can see here on these first couple highlights, he has some good athleticism to him, good pad level for somebody who's so tall, and he can get out and he can run. His offense does not provide him as many of these opportunities as you might think based on what you see here on the highlights. Having watched a couple of the full games, this is like an old school read option offense where they have super tight splits and he's not out in space a whole lot. More of what you see is these down blocks, double teams. And I think from a size perspective, he does do a lot of these things really well of, as you mentioned, former coach's son, his fundamental 6-inch step, striking well, turning his hips in the hole, understanding what he's trying to do. There's a lot of professionalism here from the offensive line that you wouldn't expect from a high school offensive lineman. He's got all of those things at a high level, and that allows him to run block well and gives a good baseline of strength in terms of functional strength on the football field. Now, some of the things you don't see, we'll start with this, if he does not have a whole lot of pass blocking snaps. So again, assuming that his dad's an offensive line coach, assistant, he's probably going to be pretty well schooled at that. So you can, maybe it's not a Javen Williams situation, right? Where he comes from an offense that's never pass blocked before, basically, and he has to learn all those things. Probably he knows how to do those things. But there is that time on task of doing it and drilling it versus actually having to block somebody in the game on a regular basis and in situations that aren't designed like in a high school offense where maybe it's on play actions or things like that. Where I think, the strength aspect of this comes in is in two areas. Explosive movements, he's fast, but there is a lack of pop in the way he moves. Now, there's two ways to go about that. Lean muscle mass versus, fat can make you not as explosive. And then there's fast twitch muscle fibers, which you need enough of to be explosive as a kind of a baseline, a bedrock of your athleticism. But you need to develop those. And that's where one of those areas where he struggles to maintain that great pad level during plays. Obviously not the ones that he shows you on the highlight film, but when you watch him pull or when you watch him out in space or you watch him try to hit a target on the second level, initial pad level is good, and then he struggles to move in space laterally and hit those targets or to maintain, kind of hunches over and he's leaning the longer he plays the play. So that is either flexibility. That's a big thing for me in terms of the ability to bend into those positions, or it's the strength to maintain those positions. So that's what I mean by there's two different ways you can go about this. Maybe he's got underdeveloped areas that once he gets stronger, he can maintain that posture throughout a play and move with it. Or there's a tightness there, especially in the upper back, when I notice these things, where I feel like he struggles to have that range of motion, where sometimes it even makes his arms look short because he's kind of bound up here. So there's a little bit of obscurity in terms of the final outcome of what all of that comes out on the other side. But you obviously are going to bet on traits of 6'8", massive wingspan, already 295 pounds with a lot of room to grow. So there are those areas. And then I guess the final question for me is not seeing his pass blocking, not seeing some of the areas in his game to be super comfortable that he's a true left tackle. I do wonder what the position flexibility is here, if he can play guard or if he's just a right tackle, because I think that there are some limitations overall that might bake into the conversation of what he becomes in the future. So those are the things I guess I'm looking for at the next level, and I'm looking for in his senior film to understand his full breadth of what he is as an athlete. When you look at the offensive line class now and knowing what you know about it, we're getting now to the point that it's more complete than not complete. How do you view the balance in this class, and how do you view the totality of what they've done this year?
Well, if they get Marlon Bright, which we expect, those are two guys that will certainly get their fair share of time, at least to start it at tackle. Marlon Bright is, legit 6'6".
Yep.
Obviously, Fuchs has 6'8" verified. So those guys are going to be tackles in my eyes. It's Kevin Brown who is the more interesting one as far as and Labintus too. I mean, I'll be honest, you've kind of sold me a little bit more on Labintus maybe being could potentially move inside, which I think a lot of these guys will start, but Azuki will probably start inside, but they're gonna certainly try these guys at tackle, and they do that with a lot of players, right? They want to see how they move out on the edge, and if they can handle it, great, and if not, then they know those players will be more comfortable inside, and that's where they'll let them become comfortable at the college level and see where things go from there. So I think they're gonna try a lot of these guys out there and throw them to the wolves, I guess, to some degree, against some of those young up and coming defensive ends and see where things play out. But no doubt in my eyes, Bright and Fuchs, they'll be the two that should certainly last there the longest or get the longest leash, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's funny. I have a bold prediction. When all of this is said and done, I have a bold prediction that I feel more confident in now. But I'll save it for later. So now that we've kind of discussed the offensive line class, we've discussed this particular commitment from Jack
Fuchs, like books.
Fuchs.
Like books.
Where we go from here, we're getting towards not just the end of the timeline, but also, I believe now 22 commits in the class of 2026. Where does Penn State stand, and what's left to land? I know we mentioned Marlon Bright. What are your eyes on over the next week and a half?
Certainly Marlon Bright and Tyson Harley. I think those two, Steve Wilfong's put in multiple crystal balls for them. We've talked about Bright endlessly, I feel like, for months now. I have him kind of penciled in the class. That'd be 23. And if they do, ultimately end up landing Tyson Harley, that would be 24. Those guys are both aiming to commit July 5th. But there's still plenty out there, guys to watch. Brian Bonner is a wild card running back out of California. Makes a lot of sense for Penn State. I would also say that, UCLA has been trying to be aggressive a little bit more than normal. I mean, look at what USC is doing as far as financially and things. They need to be aggressive. And obviously he's a California native. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. And Nebraska, too, with Brian Bonner. I think both of those schools need him more than a Penn State. But I think it's not a secret that maybe Penn State's probably a better running back school, at least development-wise, than those two programs. So how that plays out, time will tell. But he's certainly a wild card guy I have circled. I think Carter Gooden's still in play. It's kind of come in, come out with Carter Gooden. So that makes him a bit of a wild card in my eyes as well. But let's just say they do get Harley and Bright. That's 24. I've been thinking a 27 or so player class is the most realistic. So if you add in a Gooden or Bonner, kind of one of those wild card guys, you're talking 25-ish. And then to me, it's about maintaining what you have and then trying to flip guys down the stretch. Obviously, we went into the quarterback situation a little bit more in depth yesterday after Jackson Ford. In that video, they certainly will be keeping their eye out to add a second. But, they're certainly going to be pushing for, adding a lot of the talented players that have gotten away from them here in the last handful of weeks. So we'll see. I still think I would still 25 should be pretty easy to get to that bar. 26, 27. That's where it'll be a little more interesting to me to see how it all plays out. Just to pass on, Garrett Witherington, defensive lineman, supposed to commit on Sunday, I believe. I expect him to end up in Kentucky. Keyshawn Stansel commits today, actually, Saturday, June 28th. I expect him to end up at Clemson. Well, Miami has been making a late charge there, but my point with both of them is that it looks like they're trending elsewhere. Dorian Barney too is next Saturday, July 5th. Michigan's kind of taking the lead there, but I don't think Penn State's going to go down without a fight. So keep an eye on him as well.
All right, and that's a great reason. 15 minutes into the video here to like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel so you don't miss any of those things. And we'll be back with the next time Penn State football gains a commitment here on this particular video series, the committed video series. But of course, we're back on Tuesday with BWI Live, where we'll be talking about Penn State football and recapping recruiting. All kinds of great stuff. We'll be into July, which means we are in the month where training camp starts, which means your time without Penn State football is quickly drawing to a close. So make sure you subscribe here to the YouTube channel and, of course, to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to get ready for Penn State football. Talk to you next time.